I'd just finished reading Jean-Paul Sartre's Nausea, and I thought, existentialism, what a load of tosh. You know, there's this bloke staggering around the streets of Paris wondering whether a lamppost exists more than he does, you know. And I think at the time I sort of closed the book with a kind of harumph, and I sort of looked out and we were in Liverpool, and there's by the Moors gallery and all that sort of thing, there's all these wonderful equestrian statues. I think, never mind a lamppost, what about an equestrian statue? And I suddenly fantasised about, well, the existential thing about the equestrian statue. So that was the idea behind that.
Now our pianist harpsichord player Neil Innes, the composer of the next number, who's going to sing for you with rare indifference the equestrian statue.
There once was a very famous man. On his famous horse he'd ride through the land. The people used to see him everywhere. When he died, they put a statue in the square. Here comes the equestrian statue, prancing up and down the square. Little old ladies stop and say, well, I declare.
God knows what we were doing, but we were recording something in Abbey 1, and the door was open, and past they came, you see. You know, John, Paul, George and Ringo went past the door. Oh, wow. We're in the right place. So he stopped, and of course, but then Neil had out the door, round the corner, and was like this. You didn't actually go in, he was just sort of like this, you know. And then, oh, come on, lads, back in, you know, we've got to do, Let's All Go to Mary's House, or some, you know, jazz tune. And then Neil would be going, dum, 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 hey, he said, I've just heard them doing this is their latest thing, you know. And from then on, that was it.
It's a sight to bring you joy, you feel so gay. Do, and it's guaranteed to brighten up your day, if it's great.
Now, if you listen to this song, it sounds remarkably like Penny Lane by the Beatles. It takes musical influences and musical instrumentation, a lot of brass and a lot of woodwind, and works it into what was a pop song.
It was obviously inspired, I think, by the sort of release of Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane, and that bloody piccolo trumpet solo. And Roger, of course, immediately gets out his homemade trumpet and makes this frightful sound, which you have to speed up to make it sound like the brilliant brass playing that bloke was playing. I mean, that's real, that solo on there.
This question says, so I thought, right, well, I've got to do the Penny Lane trumpet. The piccolo trumpet, beautiful. So we slowed the track right down, and I got my old battered old cornet and went, just went wild on it, and speeded it up, and there it was. Worked very well.
Feel so gay. Feel so gay.
Bonzos were working with the scaffold, and part of one of the three of the scaffold was then known as Mike McGear, but it was Mike McCartney, Paul's brother. And I think might have been Mike who said to Paul, you know, sort of, you've seen the Bonzos, why don't you put the Bonzos in the film, you know? And he said, oh yeah, good idea.
He persuaded John Lennon that they ought to use the Bonzos in a sequence, which seemed fine, considering that the Beatles really didn't have any sequences at all lined up for the Magical Mystery Tour, which was made up literally on the hoof as they went along.
Apparently Lennon took an awful lot of convincing, and if you look at the clip of Lennon watching the Bonzos perform in the movie, he actually comes in with George Harrison, sits down and says,
Come on, where are they?
It's very much a sort of, oh God, do we really have to put up with this?
That night, cutie, call a cab. She left her east side drum so drab. She went out on the town. No, they will make her love a frown.
I know John Lennon was very indifferent. Paul was quite keen, but Lennon was really up his own arse, basically. They had a reception for it, I think, somewhere, and we were invited, and we were up north, and we created merry hell to go to it, and we sort of eventually went to it. We did half an act on the stage. So Larry came out in his false plastic boobs, you know, as he did in part of his tap night. And John just shouted, "Put 'em away, Larry, we've all seen 'em."
Paul McCartney took me to a hairdresser, his hairdresser, you know, I can't remember where it was, and I could certainly never afford to go there again because he paid for it, you know, to have my hair cut in the style they wanted it. And then all you get of me in the thing after that great expense is my saxophone legs and torso.
It's gonna make you pay your fare. Judy, don't you play with fate, don't leave your lover alone. If you go out of the state, his heart will turn to stone.
But that song came from probably the only song Viv and I ever wrote together in the same room. But we'd found this sort of true crime magazine, and one of the stories was Death Cab for Cutie, so we just fantasised on that.
It's a great song. I mean, it was Viv's first, you know, bursting into the Presley mimicry, long before the professional Elvis sound and lookalikes. He was doing it.
Eric sort of said, well, hang on, I've got this idea for a documentary maker who's so boring that the camera runs away from him. And then he sort of came out, I know, we'll call them the Rutles.
I feel good, I feel bad, I feel happy, I feel sad. Am I in love? I must be in love. I feel rich, I feel poor, I'm in doubt, I feel sure. Am I in love? I must be in love. Any time of the day I
You
can
can't call
see.
them the Rutles. How are you going to spell it, you know? Because I'm a pedant, you know. It'll be Rutles, you know. It'd be better to call them the Bootles. At least that's part of Liverpool. Yeah, but Liverpool isn't in Rutland. You know, it became Pythonesque. So anyway, I said, oh, look, it's your, you know, do what you want with it. You know, Rutles, terrible name. And I thought no more would happen of it. But then, as events unfold in the real world, you know, somebody's trying to get the Beatles back together again for offering them $20 million and a killer whale each. And George is appearing on Saturday Night Live, and Lorne Michaels, the producer, is waving dollar bills under his nose. All this can be yours, George. You know, all of this for me. No, you have to share it with the others. You know, maybe needn't tell Ringo. You know, this kind of running gag was going, and so it's a godsend when they asked Eric to host Saturday Night Live, because it always had a host, to show the clip of the Rutles. You know, and because they used the pretext of Eric saying he could get the Beatles back together to give him the job of being host. And so Lorne comes on again and said, look, I'm really sorry because it was a bad line. We thought he said he got the Beatles back together, but in fact he hasn't. He's got the Rutles.
Ouch, I'm falling apart. Ouch, ow, ow, ouch. When we first met, I must admit, I fell for you right from the start. I must admit, I fell for you right from the start. Now when we meet, all kinds of things, it seems to upset the apple cart. All kinds of things, it seems to upset the apple.
They showed the Rutles, and then all of a sudden Saturday Night Live audience wanted to be in on the joke. So they were sending Beatles albums in with Beatles crossed out and Rutles written there. And they suddenly went, hang on, we can tell the whole story.
I think it proves you're all daft. I suppose I'll get into trouble for saying that now.
Nasty apologised to God, Rod and the press, and the tour went ahead as planned. But it would be the Rutles
Well,
last.
we'll be playing all the places where we're supposed to play, and we hope we can, you know, bring a bit of, you know, je ne sais quoi to America again.
At the end of it, they met Bob Dylan in the idyllic San Francisco of the mid-60s, and he introduced them to a strange substance that was to have an enormous effect on them. Tea.
And of all the Beatles, George was the man who was most up for telling the stories. Of all the Beatles, he was the one that said, right, look, we've been screamed off the stage, let's put the suits in the cupboard and move on. And so this was a funny way, an amusing way of telling the story. I mean, so it's a semi-official biography of the Beatles, you know, pretending they never existed. And then you've got the Rutles, and you've got Mick Jagger lying through his teeth, you know, and Paul Simon and people like that. And all this Saturday night, not ready for prime time players. Belushi, Bill Murray, you know, Aykroyd. It's unbelievable what's happened, you know, because after the Rutles and around the 80s, a bunch of New York musicians, underground bands, wanted to cover the Rutles songs. And I said, fair enough. And there's this particular band, Galaxy 500, did a version of Cheese and Onions. Now, just in the last 6 months, their record company has wanted to re-release this, and they came to me saying, we're having problems with Sony Music, who publish it now. Well, it's owned by Michael Jackson, and it's administered by Sony Music, because Cheese and Onions was part of the thing that was snaffled up by ATV in long ago. And the upshot of this is, they said that they cannot credit me with writing it. They said that Cheese and Onions, they insist, was written by Lennon and McCartney. So, I mean, you cannot write this, can you? This is sillier than anything anyone can imagine.